Today, we delve into the pivotal Battle of Stalingrad, fought from August 23, 1942 to February 2, 1943. This conflict, involving nearly 4 million combatants, was a turning point in World War II. Hitler's decision to attack Stalingrad, named after Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, proved devastating and fateful. The battle saw a brutal and protracted struggle, resulting in significant casualties on both sides. Join us as we explore the events that changed the course of the war and shaped history. By early 1942, Adolf Hitler's ambitious plan to conquer the Soviet Union appeared to be coming to fruition. German soldiers had triumphantly marched through major cities in the Soviet Union, with Leningrad under siege and Moscow threatened. However, in the late summer of that year, Hitler made a fateful decision to attack Stalingrad, a turning point in World War II. The Battle of Stalingrad, fought from August 23, 1942 to February 2, 1943, involved nearly 4 million combatants, making it much larger than battles on the Western Front. The battle resulted in over 1 million casualties for the Nazis and their allies from Hungary, Romania, and Italy. The Red Army suffered significant losses, with nearly 480,000 soldiers dying in the 5-month defense of Stalingrad, surpassing the total American military casualties in the entire war for 16,800. Let's look at the battle in more detail. In the midst of World War II, Germany's Wehrmacht forces, having already captured significant territory in present-day Ukraine and Belarus, in the spring of 1942, launched an offensive on southern Russia in the summer of that year. Under the leadership of the uncompromising head of state, Joseph Stalin, the Soviet forces had successfully repelled a German attack on the western part of the country during the winter of 1941 to 1942. This defense had the ultimate goal of safeguarding Moscow. However, it had taken a toll on Stalin's Red Army in terms of both manpower and weaponry. While Stalin and his generals, including future Soviet Union leader Nikita Khrushchev, expected another Nazi attack to target Moscow, Hitler and the Wehrmacht had different plans. They directed their attention to Stalingrad, an industrial hub in Russia that produced crucial goods, including artillery for the country's troops. Additionally, the Volga River, flowing through the city, served as a vital shipping route connecting the western part of Russia with the distant eastern regions. Adolf Hitler desired the occupation of Stalingrad for propaganda purposes, as it bore Stalin's name. The Russians, too, felt a special obligation to protect it. When Hitler declared that upon capturing Stalingrad, all male residents of the city would be killed and its women deported, the stage was set for a brutal and protracted battle. Stalin ordered that every Russian capable of wielding a rifle take up arms in the city's defense. The assault on Stalingrad by the German Wehrmacht's 6th Army began on August 23, 1942. Initially, Russian forces managed to slow the advance of the German Wehrmacht during a series of fierce skirmishes just north of Stalingrad. However, Stalin's forces suffered heavy losses, with over 200,000 casualties, though they managed to hold off the German troops. Aware of Hitler's intentions, the Russians had already evacuated much of the city's grain and cattle. However, the city's 400,000-plus residents remained, as the Russian leadership believed their presence would inspire the defending troops. Within days of launching their attack, Germany's Luftwaffe rendered the Volga River impassable and sank several Russian commercial vessels. From late August through the end of the assault, the Luftwaffe conducted numerous airstrikes on the city. The exact number of civilian casualties remains unknown, but it is believed that tens of thousands were killed, while tens of thousands more were captured and forced into slave labor camps in Germany. By September, The Luftwaffe had established control over the skies above Stalingrad, and the Russians were increasingly desperate. Workers in the city not engaged in war-related weapons production were asked to join the fight, often without firearms. Women were tasked with digging trenches on the front lines. Despite these efforts, the Russians continued to endure heavy losses, and by the fall of 1942, Stalingrad lay in ruins. Hitler's decision to attack a city named after the Soviet leader proved devastating. Despite heavy casualties and the Luftwaffe's relentless bombing, Stalin ordered his forces to stand their ground, decreeing in Order Bummer 227, "Not a step back." Surrendering soldiers faced the possibility of execution after a trial by military tribunal. With fewer than 20,000 troops and fewer than 100 tanks within the city, Stalin's generals began to send reinforcements into the city and its surroundings. Street fighting raged in Stalingrad, with both sides deploying snipers on the city's rooftops. Russian generals Georgy Zhukov and Alexander Vasilevsky organized Russian forces in the mountains north and west of the city and launched a counterattack known as Operation Uranus. Although they suffered significant losses, Russian forces established a defensive ring around the city by late November 1942, trapping the nearly 300,000 German and Axis troops in the Sixth Army. With the Russian blockade restricting access to supplies, the German forces in Stalingrad began to starve, and the Russians would exploit this vulnerability during the harsh winter that followed. As the brutal Russian winter set in, Soviet generals knew that the Germans would be at a disadvantage, fighting in unfamiliar and challenging conditions. They began tightening their positions around Stalingrad, cutting off the German forces from crucial supplies and essentially surrounding them in an ever-tightening grip. By February 1943, Russian forces had recaptured Stalingrad and taken nearly 100,000 German soldiers captive. Most of these prisoners would die in Russian prison camps due to disease and starvation. The Battle of Stalingrad marked a significant turning point in World War II. It was the beginning of a path to victory for the Allied forces, including Russia, Britain, France, and the United States, and a severe blow to the Axis powers, including Germany. The battle had ravaged Stalingrad, leaving it in ruins, and its conclusion marked a critical moment in the war's progress. In February 2018, residents of what is now known as Volgograd gathered to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the battle's conclusion. For Soviet citizens, the fierce defense of Stalingrad, named after Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, became a source of immense national pride. Even German soldiers acknowledged the Soviet soldiers' ability to endure significant losses and fight in brutal winter conditions within the city's defense. Hitler's campaign initially aimed to secure oil in the Caucasus for the Nazi war machine. Against the advice of his senior commanders, Hitler diverted the German Sixth Army under General Friedrich Paulus to Stalingrad, a crucial industrial and transportation hub along the Volga River. The Luftwaffe launched devastating air attacks on the city, and the German Sixth Army managed to push the Red Army to the east bank of the Volga. However, the Germans soon found themselves entangled in brutal urban warfare amid the city's ruins. The Soviets were determined to bleed the German Sixth Army dry and protect their territory. On November 19, 1942, the Soviets launched Operation Uranus, encircling the beleaguered Sixth Army and its allies, trapping 250,000 soldiers within a narrow area. The besieged Sixth Army faced relentless attacks, a lack of supplies, and harsh winter conditions. Despite General Paulus's plea to surrender in late January 1943, Hitler refused, and the German rescue effort failed. On January 31, 1943, Paulus eventually surrendered, to the Soviets, a devastating blow for the German leadership. The Battle of Stalingrad marked a turning point in the war. Besides the staggering human toll, the Germans lost 900 aircraft, 500 tanks, and 6,000 artillery pieces. Unable to make up these losses, the tide turned against the Nazis. Soviet victory at Stalingrad was aided by Lend-Lease aid from the United States, as acknowledged by future Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. The Soviets subsequently went on the offensive with the Battle of Kursk and the Normandy invasion, by the Allies pushing the Germans back. By May 1945, the Red Army had laid waste to Berlin, mirroring the destruction witnessed in Stalingrad. The battle for Stalingrad played a pivotal role in the ultimate defeat of Nazi Germany.